Let's welcome Bill Peter.
Hi, Bob. It's good to be here.
Good morning, Bill. This morning we're going to be talking about connect and collaborate versus command and control. Bill, I'm going to ask you a question. Where did you find this expression, connect and collaborate versus command and control?
Well, it's a bit of a story. I teach MBA students in business school in Minnesota, and I'm a consultant. So to be a consultant and to be a business school teacher, you have to read a lot and know what's going on in the world so that you can be a positive influence for the students and for your consulting clients. Command and control has been around for a long, long time. I made up connect and collaborate as a contrast to command and control. So let me give you just a quick view of where did command and control come from in the first place. Corporations, when they first started, and the best that I have history is the first corporation was formed like in 1330.
1330.
That's the first corporation in Europe. And then it spread around Europe and then came into the United States. And corporations looked around the world and said, well, how do you organize when you've got a big number of people? And they looked at the church and they saw that the church was organized in a pyramid with the Pope and the bishops and the cardinals and the parishioners and priests and so on. So it was from top-down control. And they looked at the military, and the military had generals and captains and sergeants and privates. And so they said, okay, if we're going to organize a corporation, we've got to do it top-down control. And that went on for years and years and years. The problem, even today, is that about 90% of all people that work in the United States are working in a command and control dominated organization. But when I'm teaching and trying to help my consulting clients think for the future, I have to tell them where the new trends are, and the new trends are to connect and collaborate, and only some few organizations do it today, but that's what is going to happen in the future.
Well, why have we been organized by command and control management principles for so long?
Well, it started off because that's the way society was organized in the church and the military, and so corporations started doing it the same way. And it was convenient for people because they figured whoever is in charge should be at the top of a pyramid. And they actually drew pictures of a pyramid. And we've lived in a pyramid paradigm. This is a strange word, paradigm. It's a mindset. The pyramid paradigm is that there's always got to be somebody at the top. And our vocabulary gets organized. At the top means, well, that's the CEO or the president or somebody like that. And every organization chart gets drawn in a pyramid. And then we get language. For example, language of span of control. That's how many people one person can be the boss of, be the supervisor of. And then there's a word like the glass ceiling. Where did the glass ceiling come from? You can only have a concept of the glass ceiling if you have the concept of a pyramid in your mind, and you can't climb up but so far and then you hit the glass ceiling. But that paradigm that we have in the mind is the pyramid. And there are other words that we have in our vocabulary that are tied to the pyramid, like climbing up the ladder. Well, you can only climb up the organizational ladder if you have the brain mindset or paradigm that is a pyramid. So a pyramid has been in our vocabulary, and it's been ubiquitous around the world. And everybody says, well, that's the way it's got to be. But that is not the way it's got to be. We find that if you really want teamwork, if you really want creativity, if you really want innovation, you can't count on just the king or just the president or just the hierarchy. to get things done, you have to disperse decision making, and that's what connect and collaborate happens.
Well, as a futurist, what makes you think that connect and collaborate management principles are better?
Well, I've studied human nature, and I've studied the human brain, and if you want to be a manager and be effective, you have to utilize all the brain power in your organization. And if you stifle the brain power of the entire organization and just say all the decisions are going to be made at the top by the managers, by the CEO, so on, by the President of the United States, you are not utilizing everybody's brain power. And so as I've studied companies and I've studied society, I realized that this is not an effective use of all the brains that you've got in the organization. And people get motivated when they're involved in the decision-making process, when they're involved. Something happened a few years ago, about 20 years ago. Somebody said, oh, what we'll do is we'll eliminate layers. If there's 10 steps in the pyramid, we'll eliminate a few of those. And that was a good idea because it eliminated levels of bureaucracy. And the real energy of an organization should be on serving the clients, serving the customers. And too much energy was going into serving the next level in the organization internally. Internal effort instead of external.
You know, our Connect and it's a very interesting topic. Give me some more examples of organizations which successfully used Connect and Collaborate management systems. Some
they're
examples?
really growing. One of the organizations that you would say, well, it's got to be command and control, is the military. Always has been command and control. You always have to wait for the general to make the decision. You can't make... Well, the world has moved so that even the military has now got to use Connect and Collaborate. For example, on the ground, they have information communications, and through spy satellites, they have information coming from spy satellites. So somebody is on the ground, a little patrol goes out, and they find that there is Al-Qaeda terrorists in a certain building. They have information, they interrogate people, they've got radio interceptions, that they listen to their radio conversations. That building has got Al-Qaeda terrorists in it. They communicate through the satellite, through the radio systems, all very, very fast. They have to make a decision right now to get that knocked out, because if they wait until they ask the captain and ask the general and have all approval, by then the terrorists have left. So on the ground they put a laser on that building so that they know exactly what building they're identifying, and that send that message to the satellite. The satellite sends it to the airplane. The airplane sends the rocket in, and the rocket blows up that building. And all it has to be done in 1 or 2 minutes. You haven't got time in today's way of fighting wars to ask for all the approvals of everybody up through a general. So the people on the ground have the power to identify the building that wants to be blown up and get the power to the Air Force. Now, it might be a Marine that's identifying it on the ground. And it might be an Air Force person that's shooting the rocket. So you can't have the Air Force, the Marines, and the Army as separate bureaucracies, because you never could get a decision made. They have to be able to do things in real time, fast, and that means the people who are closest to the problem have to have decision-making capability.
That's what I was going to ask you. They have the capability of being the decision makers.
They are told, your job is to identify the enemy. Your job is to identify what we should do next. Inform people, but all of the decisions have to be done in a minute or 2 or 5. not weeks and months and not going through Congress and all the rest of this stuff. Information is moving fast, and you have to take. Now, that's the most bureaucratic thing you might think is, well, the Army has got to be bureaucratic. Well, even there, there's breaking down the barriers between the different services like the Air Force and the Marines and everything. And then they've got these special service groups that maybe are just 10 people in the special service group that's going into Afghanistan and finding something. And that is an empowered group then. They trust the information that comes from them. So that's a government kind of thing. The other extreme is when we watch television and we listen how the federal government operates, and we see how the senators ask questions and they have hearings and it goes on for months and months and months and months. That is the extreme of so much bureaucracy that you can't adequately function. They end up the year with 10 bills that have had to be approved to fund the government for the next year, and none of those bills are approved. They've been in Congress for the whole year, and they haven't approved the budgets for the next year. That's terribly inefficient bureaucracy, and the military is an example of very efficient. The smaller organization...
That's what I was going to ask you about. Is Connect and Collaborate management systems more for small organizations than what we're speaking about politically or in the military?
I've written several books, and one of them is focuses on the concept of connect and collaborate and how you can be efficient. Small companies tend to be more connect and collaborate because they haven't had the years to build up this great big organization.
How would that work?
Well, when you're small and you have two people, you and I are running a business, we just started a corner grocery store.
Okay.
We talk to each other, okay?
Right.
But when we get 10 stores and a manager in each one of the 10 stores, then we're starting to get a bureaucratic system. I used to think that if you had 1,000 people or more, you're going to have a lot of bureaucracy. But I've done a lot of consulting with companies, and I've found terribly bureaucratic companies down to just 17 people. And you would think, well, just 17 people, it would be easy to talk things over and get everybody's ideas and so on. So I've had this one opportunity with a man who was running his company of 17 people, and he called me in as a consultant, and he said, Bill, we're not doing as effectively in our business. How can we do better? I said, well, I'll tell you what, I would like to talk to each one of your 17 people for 2 hours each. And he said, 2 hours each for each of my 17 people, and then you're going to tell me? I said, sure. So this is a consultant. He said, what are you going to ask them? I said, I'm going to ask them 3 questions. One is, if I could talk to all of your clients, what would they say you are doing that is extremely effective, and therefore you should continue to do it to make your clients happy? And the second question is, what are you doing that is not as effective as the clients would like that you should improve? So you ask the clients, what should this company improve?
Their opinion about
Their
it.
opinion
Okay.
of what the company should do to serve the clients better. And the third question is, if you had a magic wand and could wave it, what 3 major changes would you make of this company so that it would be tremendously more effective, profitable, and serve the clients better?
And get that same question from each of these
Each of
17
the 17
individuals.
people. So I asked the 17 people, that they're running the company, right?
Yeah,
And
they
I
know
said,
the
what
in
do you
and
think
out.
the clients will say about you that you do well, that you do poorly, and that
Okay.
3 magic things that could change and make you better? And he said, that's how you're going to find out how we can operate? So I talked, he permitted me to do that, and he was paying me. And then then I came back and I said, I have never in my life seen a company of 17 people be so bureaucratic as yours. He says, what do you mean? I said, I talk to people and they said a client will call in and somebody who will take the message knows that the answer is on the other side of the wall. There's another one of the associates that is right on the other side of a wall. And you have rules that says that person is not to talk to this person without going through this person's supervisor, talking to the other person's supervisor before you can communicate. I said, you've set up those bureaucratic systems in a 17-person company, and it's terribly ineffective. And he said, you know what, Bill? You're absolutely right. I hired every one of these people from the time we started the company. And one time somebody said, I'm the supervisor of this group, and I'm the supervisor of this group, and nobody should talk to my people unless they go through me. And I agreed to it. That was bureaucracy. That was command and control through the pyramid. And not connect and collaborate, where a first-line person knew that the answer was in another person's mind right next to them, weren't permitted to talk to him. He said, I created that bureaucracy. I said, yes, you did. The end of that story is he was not an effective business. He wanted to get out, and I ended up buying that company.
Is that right?
And I told him what I was going to do. I said, you've got 17 people, but from everything I've heard, these people tell me this business can be run with 8 people and will be much more effective. And he said, you know, you might be right, but I can't do it because I, over a 15-year period, created this company. I made all these decisions, and they wouldn't think I was credible if I changed it. But Bill, you could take it over and make that happen. So, as a general, and it worked, as a general principle, big companies get bureaucratic. And a big company needs to constantly emphasize connect and collaborate. And the internet has made it wonderfully possible because email can go from one place to the other. And
In a matter of minutes.
You have to tell people, I don't want carbon copies of everything. You can communicate with that person in the sales department. You can communicate with that person in the manufacturing department. You don't have to get everything to me. Otherwise, if I was getting a carbon copy of everything that was going on,
too much.
it would be crazy.
Yeah.
So look, when it has to cost more than $100,000, check with me.
Yeah.
But if it's
Makes
a $10,000 or a $1,000 or a $100 item, talk it over with yourself and make the best judgments that you can. And that way you reduce the number of people who are working internal bureaucracies and writing reports and all that kind of stuff. And you get them to doing the most important jobs, which is satisfying the needs of the clients and making their jobs more interesting because they don't have so much bureaucracy. So the real trend is get rid of bureaucracy. And in one of my books, had the phrase, avoid bureaucracy like the plague. And corporations like General Motors, I consulted with General Motors when they had 46% market share. And they're down to 23% market share. They had fantastic bureaucracy. The left hand didn't know what the right hand doing. They had all different departments. They had overlap. They had an advertising department for Buick, a different advertising department for Cadillac, a different advertising department for Chevrolet, different manufacturing for each, different advertising for each. They weren't taking advantage of any of the efficiencies they could have by having a large corporation. They had everything duplicated, and that cost lots of money. So you can't run an efficient corporation or efficient organization and have duplication of efforts.
You know, I'm just curious, and I'm sure my audience is curious too. Now, you said that you bought that company.
Yes.
How long was it in existence under your management?
Well, it was under existence, the previous, for 15 years. I bought them, and the way to...
Oh, and excuse me, I want to interject this. How did you, you said that from 17 you were only going to use 8.
8.
How did you come to that particular 8?
When I was interviewing them, and I told the owner this, I asked each one of them, who, other than yourself, would be required to run this company effectively if we only had 8 people. So every person told me who the most valuable 8 people were,
Oh,
other than themselves.
I'm glad I asked that question because
Other than themselves, who were the 8? Now, so I had 17 people's answers on, other than themselves, who was the most important 8 to run this company
and
effectively.
they were right on about each
Everybody
other.
said the same thing,
Same people.
but they were.
What a good way.
They knew who to eliminate. Well, as it turns out, I only wanted the client list of this customer.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want their computer software because I wanted to convert those people's customers from their computer software to my computer software.
see.
So I didn't want to own their software. It was obsolete. That's why they were not having good business. I wanted them to use my software, but I wanted their clients. So I, in essence, wasn't buying the corporation structure. I was buying their client list. But I had some good fun and good success in this.
And
I
how
told
long
the-
did
I
you
told
keep
the-
it?
I told the CEO, to make this a smooth transition, you and I, the CEO of that company and myself, because I was not only a consultant, but I was the CEO of my own company, you have major customers in 13 different locations around the United States. You and I will go to those 13 locations, bring in your customers, and you will tell them you thought you were going to go out of business, but instead of going out of your business, you're selling the business to me. And if you will do that, then they will have the urgency to switch their software from their present software to ours. And as many people as switch in the first year, that's how much money you'll end up getting paid. So you have to help me convince these people to come to my software, and if you do, you're going to make some substantial money. Well, they had about 260 customers, and around 120 switched to our software within a year, and that's what became our new business. And the man got paid for those 120 that
Wow.
switched, and that software then went into non-existence, but only the ones that went to our software were able to, and that took about a year.
Well, that really proves that this works. Now, how could Sun City Grand use the advantages of Collaborate and Connect management systems? How could we use that?
Well, I'll make a small departure before I get into Sun City Grand. Many companies have done this successfully. If you look for a model, Google is doing it extremely effectively. Southwest Airlines is doing it extremely effectively. W.L. Gore, which is a $1 billion plus company, but hardly anybody has heard of it. They make Gore-Tex, which is used in outdoor fabrics. Those are the 3 most dramatic examples of Connect and Collaborate. But Connect and Collaborate is becoming more and more effective with the Internet instituting connectability everywhere.
Could
Now,
we use it
how
here?
could Sun City
Yeah.
Grand use it? I wanted to mention those others because it's not something that's just
Yeah.
a figment of my imagination.
No.
Small companies use it all the time. The nature of Sun City Grand is very bureaucratic. It has a bureaucratic core. It's a bureaucratic setup. And therefore, it's sort of like the government. We've got rules, we've got regulations, we've got to follow this rule, we've got to follow that regulation. And many of those things are good because for protecting the property value, you want to have, for instance, the little camcard that we have.
Yeah.
You don't want people to be coming in the street and be able to do everything. The little camcard says, you belong here.
That's
okay?
right. That's right.
So there's some little things that you can do that are effective for communication. But when you have committees that take months and a year sometimes to discuss issues. And decisions don't get made very quickly and so on. Then you wonder if the bureaucracy has gotten in the way. It's a tricky thing to talk about, and it's a little sensitive on my part. I happen to be a snowbird,
Yeah.
and I'm only here 4 months of the year, but I've been here 8 years. I considered going to run for being on the board of directors. It is not effective to be a snowbird and be on the board of directors because
No.
they want your services year round.
Yeah.
But there is a us versus them attitude among permanent residents and some snowbirds. And I think that it would be good if the Sun City Grand people would consider, should we have a conference? Should we have a discussion with 10 snowbirds and 10 full-time residents and talk it through? What's good about snowbirds? Oh, they pay the full CAM fee for the whole year.
And
they pay they buy houses. They pay.
Yeah.
So there's pluses about snowbirds.
Yes, there
What's
is.
the negatives about snowbirds? Well, they might not take as good care of their home when they're not here. So that might be a negative. That could be negative for community. But there's a bureaucracy of snowbirds versus full-time residents that is present in Sun City Grand.
Yes, there is.
And it doesn't get broken because there's no snowbirds on the board of directors as
And
a
there
consideration.
are more ways than one to skin a cat. There are ways to use the valuable services for people such as yourself who are knowledgeable about running business and so forth. And so I'm going to close with asking you this last question. We do need to talk more about Sun City Grand, but I think people here now have the idea of what you're speaking of. But as a futurist, what do you see in the next 50 years in Connect and Collaborate methods? What do you see happening? Quickly, please, because we're running out of time.
Yeah,
But I'm curious about that.
The long term, I look at 2020 and 2035 as target years, and all of the fundamentals are in place. The internet helps connect and collaborate. The email, communications, fast communications, all of those are encouraging connect and collaborate.
Incidentally, that email and being able to connect would work if they would utilize the services of snowbirds, I think.
Oh, sure. And there's no, the system with an interactive website where you put something on the website and you ask questions and you get answers.
Yep.
You could have a democracy type thing where every week there are 3 questions and everybody in the community responds to those questions.
That's
and you
right.
get feedback quickly, and that's easier than committee meetings,
Yes.
for example, for Sun City Grand. Now, so the internet is ubiquitous, websites are ubiquitous, and you can get votes and people's opinions quickly by posing questions and getting answers. You have a continuous market research. The general trend is in place, and worldwide, it's because technology is worldwide, communications is worldwide, and education is worldwide.
Okay.
We should be able to go to Connect and Collaborate. Sun City Grand could do it easily, but it
And-
has to have the mindset that it wants to not
Okay.
just be command and control.
Let's talk about this another time. We have run out of time, and it's been very interesting. I still have questions I want to talk to you about. But for now, we're going to have to close and say thank you, Bill. This was a wonderful, interesting topic to cover for Channel 22. I'm Barbara Mel Goldman, and it's a wrap.